Welcome to Lair the Alchemist, where we discuss all things heavy metal and hard rock in another edition of Sabbath Sunday. This is where we get together on Sundays to talk Black Sabbath. And for this episode, Darren and I are going to be listing our 5 least favorite Tony Martin era Black Sabbath songs. Now, Darren and I are both fans of all eras of Black Sabbath. We love the Tony Martin era albums, but there's some songs that are our least favorite from this era. It doesn't necessarily mean we can't stand the songs. If we do, maybe we'll say that when we mention the song. So don't come at us hard if we pick a song that's your favorite song. These are just our least favorite of the Tony Martin era. So, okay, Darren, what do you got for your first pick for your least favorite Tony Martin era Black Sabbath song?
I'm going to start at 5 and work backwards. So my number 5 in the number 5 position is Hand That Rocks the Cradle from Cross Purposes. That was, I love the album. I love Tony on the record. I think the record is, if it's not my favorite Tony Martin record, it's definitely in my top 2 or 3. That song though, I've never really been able to warm up to. There was a movie that came out in and around the same time. I associated it with the movie. The song just kind of sounds sort of disposable to me. It just doesn't have a signature Sabbath dark vibe to it. And so that's my main problem with it. Lyrically, it doesn't really, it doesn't do much for me either. So number 5 for me, Hand That Rocks the Cradle.
Yeah, I should mention that we made a decision before this that we would not put on our list any interludes or instrumentals. So you're not going to get Scarlet Pimpernel or, the Gates of Hell, the intro to Headless Cross. We decided to leave those off. So, all right, my number 5 is from the Tear album, Feels Good to Me. I'm normally a fan of, I say this all the time, I like Tony Martin when he's singing these sort of dark ballad things. I think he really shines. But this doesn't work for me. It's kind of like No Stranger to Love, the sequel that no one asked for or something. It sounds way too slick for me. This album already has that quality to it, you could call it dated 80s if you want, a lot of reverb on the sound and everything. And this and maybe it's too because there's a video for it that's very cliched, very 80s. And I just can't get the video out of my head whenever I hear this song. I like Tony's performance in it. I actually think his voice sounds really good in it, but it's just such a, Whitesnake, keyboardy, ballad, MTV. It just doesn't work for me. I do not care for this. Do not care for that one at all.
Honestly, that's weird. I think you referenced that when we were talking about Tony Martin, one of our previous segments, and I thought you liked it. Anyway.
I like when he sings those kind of songs.
Yeah.
If I were to say a performance from Tony Martin, I think his vocal performance on it is good, really good, because I think he sounds good singing those types of songs, but the song in general is way too dated, and I don't know. It just doesn't. It dates itself, very, very badly for me. And some of that's the production, and it doesn't sit very well on the record either. You've got sort of this Norse themed album, and you've got these big dramatic things like Anna Monday, and
I get it.
And it just sort of lands on you, and it just seems very, very out of place. And it's sort of sequenced deep into the album also, thank goodness, if it was earlier in the record. But A+ to Tony for his performance on it, but the song doesn't work for me.
Yeah. Okay. So number 4 for me is Sick and Tired from Forbidden. The reason I don't like this song is because I get the impression that Tony Martin is indeed sick and tired of being Jerked Around by Tony Iommi and Black Sabbath. I think that was in the background at this time. But the music is really good. It's a great song musically. They could have done so much more with it, but the lyrics are really bad lyrics. It just sounds really phoned in, and it's a shame, and it's really frustrating because I could hear when I listen to the music. It's bluesy, it's heavy, it's kind of it is pretty dark, but the lyrics are just so cliche and just really trite. It's like there was very little effort that went into it, and that's and the chorus. I mean, I just think that vocally and lyrically it comes up short, and it's a shame because the music, like I said, I think is really good.
Well, you knew the Forbidden album was going to be show some songs from Forbidden. Forbidden were
Yeah.
going to show up on this list. We were almost going to instate a no more than 2 songs from Forbidden
Yeah.
rule for this list. But yeah, you're right. That song perfectly describes kind of the way I think of that record. It sounds like Tony is tired. It sounds like the band is tired. It just sounds like guys that are just exhausted and right. Okay, so for me, my number 4 from the Forbidden record is Shaking Off the Chains. I do not like the way that melody line follows the riff. Dun dun da 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 dun dun da 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 dun da 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 da. Especially that da 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 da. The way he sings right along with that part to me is just like it was like the record button is okay. We got to put something on this, you know. And it's just okay, and he just sort of follows along with the riff. And now Ozzy, that was something, a trademark of Ozzy, following along his melody line with the riff, Iron Man and stuff like that. And it works in a song like Iron Man because it reinforces the riff. The riff in this song is just sort of clumsy. It's like tripping over itself. And just the way he falls along with that is just, and the lyrics just don't work either. And just the whole song just sounds so forced, like they're trying to do something different. They're trying to make this work, and they're just trying to get to 40 minutes worth of music on this record just so they can contractually get this thing out. And it just sounds so awkward to me.
That's a really good pick. That's one that's hard to get through. That's definitely one of the weaker moments on Forbidden, and there's quite a few of them. Number 3 for me is Feels Good to Me. All the reasons that you said I agree with, but in addition to that, it makes Black Sabbath sound like it makes Black Sabbath sound like a generic band in and around that era. There's nothing Black Sabbathy about it. There isn't a cool riff. It's not dark. It's not even really consistent with the rest of the album, and you made that point. It's just strange, and it just sounds like it's somebody told them, oh, we need a hit single, and we need a video song, and it needs to sound something like Lita Ford just put out a hit single. Make it sound like that Lita Ford song.
You got a little traction with No Stranger to Love. Why don't you try to do something like that again?
Yeah, I like that song. It's not part of our Tony Martin, category here, but I see with No Stranger to Love I can get into. There's a dark, bluesy undertone to that, and I love Glenn Hughes. So that, it's not a popular song. I mean, I've gotten in arguments with people about, 7 Star, No Stranger to Love, and I'm like, yeah, well, that's a great song. No, it's not. Like, well, what don't you like about it? It sounds too commercial. I'm like, well, maybe so, but there's still that bluesy, dark, Iommi, has a nice solo in that. It's Glenn Hughes, and he's singing his heart out. I mean, it's a great song. So that's where that sort of thing works. Feels Good to Me is that sort of a vibe, but not as effective. And, you can compare the 2 songs in sentiment, but, as far as performance and the video kills it too. I mean, it's like guys driving down the road. He's in like some kind of a Porsche or Ferrari or
Yeah,
something.
like a
And
Bon Jovi looking guy.
yeah, Bon Jovi looking guy. And he's looking over and there's a girl on a bike and she's got a red leather jacket on and she's riding a motorcycle. Now, hard pass on Feels Good to Me. Yeah.
All right, my number 3 is from Cross Purposes, the last song on Cross Purposes, Evil Eye. Cross Purposes for me runs out of gas a little bit on the last 2 songs, especially Cardinal Sin and Evil Eye. And I kind of like the riff in the beginning. And this is the song that there's the story that Eddie Van Halen supposedly played a solo on it. We talked about this. Iommi has said that's not the case. He was just there when they were rehearsing. So he got some sort of invisible writing credit on it or something that doesn't show up because of contractual reasons. Whatever, it doesn't matter. It doesn't. The song, it just doesn't go anywhere, and it's just the album just sort of, that album runs out of gas for me in the last 2 songs, which is a shame because the album starts really strong for me. Eyewitness, Cross of Thorns. It starts off great, but then the last couple songs on the record just are very forgettable to me. They just seem to just lack inspiration, and they're things that under normal circumstances that would have been a B-side, or it would have just gotten cast side, and they would have reused the opening riff, some that cool, like da 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 da.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool, and they probably would have cast it aside, and that riff would have shown up somewhere else where it worked a little bit better. But here it just falls flat for me.
I like Evil Eye. The chorus is catchy. It stays in your head. It's probably one of the highlights on the album for me, ironically, in contrast to your dislike for it. Number two for me is Call of the Wild from Headless Cross. And I'm kind of torn with this song because there's a lot about it that I like. But when it gets into, even the pre-chorus is pretty cool. When it gets into the chorus, man, it just kills it. Everything that's good about the song is just diminished as soon as that chorus kicks in. It just sounds so syrupy, sweet. It's just sugar coated, and because of the melodies and the riff and everything that happens before that, I can almost overlook the keyboards. There's a lot of keyboards in this song, but it doesn't bother me until I get to the chorus, and then I just don't like the chorus. It just falls flat. It just sounds like this is one of the songs, and I've made the reference from time to time about Headless Cross, there being like a White Snake connection. It's like somebody in the office at IRS was kind of pushing him in that direction. And then the fact that he had Cozy Powell on drums, who was on Slide It In, and then Neil Murray was soon to be a member of the band, but he joined up during the tour. He was the live bass player. Lawrence Cottle was the is that his name? Lawrence Cottle was the yeah. It was one of our trivia questions.
One of our trivia questions, yeah.
I'll never forget it. But anyway, it kind of has that, it's like somebody was saying, well, White Snake is doing pretty good in sales. Why don't you guys write some songs that sound like White Snake? All right, okay, we can do that. And that's kind of what they did on Call of the Wild. I mean, there's a bit of a Black Sabbath vibe, and like I said, up to a point, but then the chorus for me just kills it, and it just where I can, start to like warm up to. There's Black Sabbath albums that I didn't like initially that I've warmed up to over time. Seven Star is one of them. Born Again, I'm getting better with. Headless Cross, I'm working on. And when I'm getting into these songs where I'm starting to wrap my head around some of the things that I didn't like before, I just hit a wall with Call of the Wild, and it's because of that chorus.
That almost made my list, but but it didn't. And my number 2, I'm going to pull a fast one on you here. We like surprises here at the Lair. I'm going to go with the B-side, Some Kind of Woman. It was the B-side to The Shining.
Yeah.
And it was one of the early songs that Tony Martin wrote with Tony Iommi. And thank goodness the band did not go in this direction. It's it sounds like Van Halen, Hot for Teacher, boogie rock or something. I mean, totally doesn't work. Thank goodness they didn't toy with this idea of going in this direction.
Yeah.
It just totally doesn't feel right. The main riff is this sort of status quo Van Halen hot for teacher type of riff that if you didn't know any better, you'd never even think it was Tony Iommi riff. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe Tony Martin plays guitar. Maybe he came up with the riff. Who knows? We'll give him a pass though, because they were smart enough to realize that it shouldn't land up on an album, that it was a B-side. But yeah. I actually had trouble picking 5 Tony Martin songs that least favorite, or Tony Martin songs that I don't like. So that's why I sort of reached in here and sort of went a little deeper here and pulled out this B-side. So that's my number 2.
Okay. So my number 1 is, and I strongly suspect something tells me that we might have the same number 1. It's the illusion of power from Forbidden.
Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah, that is really challenging. I mean, as much as you want to try to make excuses for Forbidden, and you're a diehard fan, and you know you want to like everything, and you try hard, even if it doesn't get you the first time, you're going to keep trying and try to really like it, and you're pretty sure that there's something about it that you'll latch onto and you'll be able to internalize, and it may move from one of the songs you don't like to become one of your favorites. And there's a lot of moments like that on various albums, but that's not this song. This song is one that is a real challenge. It's always been a challenge for me to get into. It starts out, it's dark. First of all, it's not a very good album opener. It's not a very well written song to begin with. I don't think. It's not a very good album opener. So I mean, it's almost as though Forbidden was doomed from the start. When you put this on there, and then you've got to get the keyboards again, and it's overwhelming in the song. The riff is heavy and it's dark, and it does kind of have that Black Sabbath earmark quality to it, but it's the spoken kind of scattered vocal delivery that Tony Martin puts into it. I don't like it.
No.
And then it kind of breaks off, and then it has the Ice-T spoken rap thing. Really foreign. It doesn't belong in a Black Sabbath song. And I don't have a problem with Ice-T or rap music. I mean, I should say that I'm not a fan of rap, but if you are, more power to you. All good. But it's like I don't want to mix my Black Sabbath with rap. I just don't. There's a long-standing tradition of traditional heavy metal, and I just don't think the two marry very well. And this is proof of that.
This is my number 1.
Yeah.
My number 1 also, The Illusion of Power. And for me, like you said, I don't have anything against Ice-T either. And some people may not know that sort of around this time frame, Ice-T and Body Count was very, very popular. What was his name? Ernie C. Produced the record, produced Forbidden, and he was in Body Count. My problem, I have a whole bunch of problems with the song. Bringing in Ice-T almost felt like a move like them trying to make Black Sabbath sound hip to the younger kids. The same way when Ozzy brought in
Post Malone.
Okay. I've got the same issue with that. Not that I actually kind of like Post Malone, but it just seems like a play to a younger crowd to try to hey, listen, he's cool. He's got somebody who's happening right now. Sort of the same thing with Black Sabbath and Ice-T. Like if they had brought in, for Ozzy's at the point in his career where having Elton John sing with Ozzy makes total sense, because Elton John is a legend. Ozzy is a legend. They're both peers of each other in a lot of ways. Makes sense. Okay, Black Sabbath, if they had brought in, let's say, Henry Rollins, okay, and Henry Rollins did a spoken word thing in the middle of Illusion of Power. Like if you've ever heard, I was trying to remember I forgot to look it up before the video started. He does this in a Tool song. I think it's off of like Undertow, where they're just jamming on this riff, and Henry Rollins does this menacing, like sort of rhyming. He's not rapping, but he's like speaking and doing this thing in it. If it
Yeah.
was Henry Rollins, it might have made more sense. It still wouldn't have worked, but it maybe could have made a little bit more sense. All that aside, with the Ice-T thing, the way Tony, what really bothers me is the way Tony Martin is like sort of yelling or something. He's like speaking and yelling, and it
Mhm.
just, I don't know if he's trying to rap or if he's trying to do something halfway in between. This is so foreign to him. He just doesn't know what to do with it. He's handed this, from all accounts from this record, they were sort of forced into this whole thing with Ernie C, and nobody was really comfortable with it. It just seems so awkward, and it's almost like I feel personally offended by this song, because in 1995 when this came out, and I've told this story, I was so, we're knee deep in grunge at this point. And I was just so ready for, okay, Black Sabbath, all my other heroes had let me down. Iron Maiden was letting me down. Judas Priest was letting me down. Everybody was letting me down. And I thought to myself, if there's anybody who's going to come in like Superman and save the day, it's going to be Black Sabbath. I know I can count on Black Sabbath. And I can remember it like it was yesterday, putting that cassette in my car, hearing that and just going, what in the world? I was so disappointed. It just so doesn't work. It's a terrible start to the record. It sort of ruins. It took me, you talk about it took you time to get into certain records. It took me years and hundreds of hours of therapy to be able to, sitting on the
Yeah.
couch while the therapist played Forbidden. I mean, it took me forever to get past. It was like some childhood traumatic thing from my mid-20s or something. I just couldn't get past it, and
Yeah.
it ruins the record for me. It's already a shaky record to begin with, and it annoys me that a band as mighty as Black Sabbath, maybe they were pressured by the record company, they were cornered, they had no choice, but just to do something like this to try to sell, just felt like they were doing it to sell records. It wasn't like an artistic reason or something. It just
No.
felt so forced and so wrong. And again, like, I actually like some of those on the Nativity in Black tribute thing. There's some people that interpret the Sabbath songs in different ways and stuff like that. And I actually like Body Count. I think that there's cool. They're heavy and their riffs and everything like that. So I sort of see a little bit of the connection. Body Count had these heavy kind of Sabbathy type of riffs sometimes, but it should have been like not on a Sabbath record. It should have been for something else on a compilation record or a benefit album or something like that. It should have just never have landed up on a Black Sabbath album.
No, and it definitely shouldn't have been the lead song on to get the album kicked off. I mean, if you wanted to put it on at the very end or
Yeah,
something.
like a bonus track. Back then it was famous for Japanese bonus tracks. Should have been a Japanese bonus track. It should have been the last song on the record or something, or a tagged on. This was the era of, bonus tracks and things like that. They could have tagged it on as some sort of exclusive bonus or something. And I would have been okay with it like that. But the fact that they start the record with it, it's like they're almost trying to, like, I don't know. I have no idea what their
Like I'm
logic
setting,
was.
yeah, it's as though they want that to be the first thing you hear. Like, look what we're doing. This is the main theme of the album, and it's unfortunate because that's something that I would probably put as an afterthought. Like after you have all the other expressions and all the other music laid out in the album, and if you want to like kind of put in something a little different, a little bit off the beaten path and something interesting, well then put it at the end, so that you've already put your best foot forward and well, here's a little something, check it out. Maybe you'll like it, maybe you won't, but we wanted to take a little risk. I can kind of understand that in that sequence, in that context, but to kick things off with that song is just it's unfortunate. And the thing about it was when the album came out, I really liked Cross Purposes, and I was pleased with it, and I saw them live, and I really had a good time at the concert, and I felt like Sabbath had really, I was aware of the Tony Martin era, and I had bought the albums. I wasn't a huge fan of the Tony Martin era. There was nothing against him. I just felt like it was average. That was kind of my opinion. I just, there was nothing about any of the records insofar as my experience with them that really blew me away or made them stand up to or stand toe to toe with the Dio era or the Ozzy era. I thought they were okay. But Cross Purposes was the album that got me into a more accepting and inviting Tony Martin frame of mind. Uh, Crown of Thorns, is Cross of Thorns, Cross of
Yeah.
Thorns. I always get that confused. Cross of Thorns was the one that really did it. I just, and I still do. I love the song. I love the lyrics, the melody, the arrangement, everything about it. Just it's a great song. It fires on all cylinders, and I love it. And so moving from that song to the rest of the album, it just set the course, and it was a good way for me to get into the Tony Martin Black Sabbath, and then go back and revisit the other albums now that I've had this experience. And it really opened up, it broadened my mind to the things to the work that he had done on previous albums that I didn't previously embrace. So so when Forbidden came out, and I saw that the record store at the time, this is before the internet, at least for me it was, I saw they had like a dry erase board, and they had all the things that were coming out, and I saw Black Sabbath, and I'm like, wow, it's only been 2 years and Black Sabbath has a new album. Being that I was a fan of Cross Purposes, and I was really looking forward to it, and I went to the record store on release day. At that time, new releases came out on Tuesday.
Yeah, Tuesday nights,
So,
right?
yeah, so I went to the record store at lunchtime, and I got it, and I was a little bit taken back by the cover art. I thought the cover art was pretty lame, pretty cheesy. But okay, well, the proof is in the music. Let's not judge a book by its cover, so to speak. But man, as soon as I put the album on and I heard that, I was just like, my jaw dropped, and I'm like, oh man, really? Ugh, off to a really bad start. And then moving from song to song, and the music, and I still think the music's good. And I think that if it had, if Tony Martin came in with better lyrics, something that was more inspired and put a more inspired vocal performance in, I think the music that's there was a solid foundation to make a really good record. But unfortunately, he just kind of took a crap on it. And I guess I understand that, and so far as his experience with what was going on,
difficult situation for him.
yeah, but I mean, put that aside, because I mean, this is part of your legacy. This is his legacy with the band, and regardless of how whatever you were going through, you're in it, and you're recording, and you're singing on the album. I mean, if you can't do it right, just don't do it at all. No point.
Yeah, it sounds like there was a whole bunch of things that just went wrong with that record, and they all just piled on top of each other. And like you said, with Cross Purposes, I was the same way. I felt invested in the band. It was like Dio was out after Dehumanizer, and I did really like Dehumanizer, but now Tony Martin's back. I liked Cross Purposes. It felt like, okay, let's get going here now. Sabbath in the 90s, this is going to be, here we go. Cross Purposes. It's getting back to Tony Martin. And it just seemed like it just didn't work. Now, Forbidden, it is an album that I do like to listen to every now and then, because I haven't listened. It's my least listened to Black Sabbath album. So there are some things on it that I do enjoy, Rusty Angels and other things on it that I can give a listen to and find something to hear. But I almost always skip over. In fact, I downloaded the Tony Martin albums onto my phone so that I can listen to them in the car, and I didn't even put Illusion of Power. I didn't even download it onto my phone. I took it off because the
Yeah.
album just flows way better without Illusion of Power on
Yeah.
it for me.
And I'm not sure which is worse. I mean, I could almost live with the Ice-T thing. It wouldn't bother me. He has kind of a sinister quality to
Yeah,
his
he
voice.
does. Yeah, it is kind of
He's not
cool.
bad. You know, when you say Henry Rollins and the song he did with Tour, which I think was Prison Sex, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe it's Tolerance. I don't know. But anyway, there's not that much of a difference between the two uh, things, between what Ice-T does on The Illusion of Power and what Henry Rollins does with Tool. But it's the combination of that, introducing that into a song where Tony Martin is singing it so poorly. You know, so if Tony Martin was, if he delivered like a really great performance, and the melodies and the structure, the lyrical structure and lyrics themselves were a lot better, and then there's that part where Ice-T's voice came in, I probably wouldn't mind it that much. It might strike me as odd, but it wouldn't
Yeah,
bother
almost
me.
like if it was an instrumental and then in the middle of it,
Yeah,
that rapping, because like you said, Ice-T does have a really cool voice. He has kind of an intensity to
yeah,
his voice when
yeah,
he raps and everything. And if like it was mixed a little different, like we keep I keep referencing this Henry Rollins Tool thing. The Henry Rollins Tool thing is very menacing sounding. Henry's like speaking and there's a lot of like reverb on his voice and everything. But this is like, if they had maybe treated this the same way, where it was maybe like an instrumental, the first part is like an intro. The album starts off with that big heavy riff like an instrumental, and then there's that rapping part comes in for a little bit. You're right. Now that I think of it, I think it might have been more enjoyable. It's almost like you get this half rap from Tony Martin,
yeah,
and then you get Ice-T, who's a very good rapper, coming in, and it's sort of the contrast between the two of them is what makes it so awkward. If you were to take, and I have a feeling that if you were to ask Tony Martin, he'd probably say, yeah, I don't know, I didn't know what to do with that either. He was
yeah,
probably sort of backed into out of his element on that. So they just should have handled it differently. Make it the main part an instrumental, that rapping thing come in, it would have been more acceptable, and it would have felt like more of like a, all right, well, this is just a little intro, uh, uh, prelude to the record. It's not
yeah,
really the album proper. It's a little instrumental thing, and kind of like the Gates of Hell at the beginning of Headless Cross. You don't really think of that as the first song. You think of Headless Cross as the first song. Gates of
yeah,
Hell is just a little introduction, prelude, credits, opening credits.
yeah.
They could have done the same thing with Forbidden, and I think it would have been way more impactful. And then if it was this kind of thing like Ice-T setting up the album, like he's almost like a narrator or something, rapping, and okay, here we go, Black Sabbath, ladies and gentlemen, Black Sabbath, and the curtain opens, and now the album proper
Yeah,
kicks in. It could have worked like that. I never really thought of it until
yeah,
you mentioned it, but it could have been something, could have been handled, and it could have been made into something really, really cool, where it would have been this cool kind of like, oh wow, they combined these two elements, and took a Black Sabbath heavy riffing and had this really great rapper over the top of it, and it really, the two things worked. It could have been something to be impressed by, and everything,
yeah.
but instead it
I think this is
just
around
didn't
the
go
same
well.
time that there was that Judgment Night soundtrack too, the movie Judgment Night, where there was rap and metal, and there was like a fusion of the two things. And I think that was pretty successful. So maybe that was Ernie C. or whoever it was that was in charge of making some of the decisions, or, sort of saddled, or, you know, assisted some of the decisions involved with this album. Maybe he said, or convinced the rest of the band or whoever, that, man, this is hot, this is happening, the kids are really going to like this, trust me, it's going to be a win. And with regard to the Judgment Night soundtrack, I mean, it was, but you had certain bands that were kind of predisposed to having a more urban sound.
And Body
Biohazard,
Count was huge at that
yeah,
time.
Body Count,
And they were basically kind of down tune, heavy riffing with like aggressive rap. Think like early Rage Against the Machine,
yeah,
sort of in that world of like heavy riffing with rap type vocals over the top. So it makes sense why they would have thought that this could have possibly worked because there were other people doing this kind of thing at that time. And I guess it was just, again, like we've said, it was just handled. It
It,
just wasn't handled the right way.
yeah, I think there's, like I started to say, there are certain bands that I think are more predisposed to being, uh, to complement rap music and vice versa. Anthrax, Biohazard, like bands that have kind of a more of an urban sound. Black Sabbath it's always been traditionally an English heavy metal band. I mean, it's really a stretch to try to get urban, American, whatever, however you want to describe it, rap music, and integrate it with traditional English heavy metal. It's hard. You got to really try. And if you are going to do it, you really got to brainstorm and figure out what elements of both could possibly complement uh, each other. And it just seems, I mean, there may be a combination if you're smart enough or you're creative enough to figure it out. But I don't think there was that much thought invested in this particular situation. So, I mean, it didn't work.
All right, well, there you go. There's Darren and I, our least favorite Tony Martin era Black Sabbath songs. Now, like we said, we are big fans of Tony Martin, so maybe what we're going to have to do next is we're going to have to do our favorite Tony Martin songs. I actually did a 5 favorite Tony Martin era songs very early on in my channel, but maybe I'll revisit that. Maybe I'll add some more to that. We'll hear what Darren's 5 favorite Tony Martin songs are, because we do love Tony Martin. We do love this era of the band, but just like any era, there's some songs that sort of miss the mark, and maybe we'll do the same thing with the Dio and with the Ozzy era, our least favorite songs from those eras too. So, okay, let us know in the comments down below, what are some of your least favorite Tony Martin era Black Sabbath songs. Make sure you check out our podcast, Into the Void, a Black Sabbath podcast. Leave a link to that below, and we will see you on the next Sabbath Sunday.